Hey everyone, welcome back to the program. Today I'm speaking with the authors of the brand new book, Rockin' the Kremlin. This is the crazy but true story of how David Junk became the first CEO of Universal Music in Russia and brought all this Western music into the country after the fall of the Soviet Union. He dealt with the mafia, oligarchs, all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't want to spoil it. Let's talk to the guys who wrote it. Thank you so much for being here, David and Fred. This is such a fun book to read. So yeah, let's just talk about how you two met.
Well, it all started in Stockholm in the year 2000. One of my passions in life is the Eurovision Song Contest.
Right.
I started attending in 1995. Whoever wins is the host the following year. So Sweden won in 99. So we're in Stockholm in the year 2000. And the singer from Russia was a teenage girl named t.A.T.u.
Right.
And she was the first Russian artist signed to Universal Music Russia, and the CEO of the company was there, and that was David Junk. So we met at Eurovision, and we just, you know how you have a bond with somebody right away?
Of course, yeah.
We just hit it off. We became friends.
That's awesome.
And stayed friends for a long time. Mm-hmm. David went back to Eurovision a couple years later with t.A.T.u.
Yeah.
So we saw each other again. And eventually, we lost touch.
Yeah.
But a couple of years ago, Billboard asked me to write a really in-depth story about the history of Ukraine and Russia in Eurovision.
Right.
And I thought, I got to find David and interview him because he went to Eurovision representing Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote to the 10-year-old email address and got an immediate reply. And he said, I own the Bang & Olufsen stores in Southern California. Next time you're in LA, come to my store. I'll take you to dinner. And over dinner, he said, I want to write a book about my time in Russia. And I said, do you have a publisher? No. Do you want me to ask my publisher? Yes. My publisher said, I want that book. It was like immediate.
Yeah.
It's exactly the kind of book we want to publish.
Yeah.
I went back to David with the good news, and he said, would you write it? And here we are.
Yeah. From someone from the outside, like, what are some of the unforeseen challenges of trying to co-write a book, especially one like this?
To be honest, I don't think we had any challenges because this is the fourth book I've done where I've interviewed someone about their life. So starting with Dick Clark, I wrote a book about American Bandstand with him. He made a book deal and asked me to write the book. I interviewed him over a summer and wrote it in his first person. Then I did a book on The Sound of Music with the actors who were in the movie. Same thing.
Yeah.
Then I was asked to do a book on the Jackson 5 for their 50th anniversary. Same thing. I interviewed the Jackson brothers. Wrote a book. So when David said, would you write it? I said, I've done this a few times. And so we did interviews for 6 months. And I wrote for 6 months in his voice.
Yeah.
And he wrote a lot too.
I think it made the book so much better that I asked Fred to help me with it, because when I first had this idea, I was sketching out chapters that were about what happened in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union in the music industry that I worked in over there. But I wasn't writing myself into the story. I was more like observing what happened. It was all almost becoming like an academic book or a history book.
Yeah.
And it was hard because I've never written a book before, so it was hard for me to inject myself into the story. And so when Fred and I teamed up, it was natural for Fred to ask me all the things that I had done in that story, and he's the one that injected me into these various situations, and that's why the book turns out to be so much more interesting to read than just a history piece,
or like a Wikipedia article.
Exactly.
Because you were there, you lived it, and it's cool for me because what was it, 1990 that everything fell? I don't know. I was 8, so it was like okay. And I remember my brother graduated high school that year. And one of the speakers, like the valedictorian, had this big, long speech about East and West and coming together and all this stuff. And like, it was something I didn't really understand or appreciate, just like how much of a big deal that was. And I wonder if you could touch on that, like kind of go in depth, like from your perspective. I know it's in the book, but we're here.
Well,
because it brought you to Russia, which I think is so interesting. But before that, you wanted to study or learn Russian.
well, you know what? It's not even that, Eric. I got my start in the most unusual way. I consider myself one of the biggest Pink Floyd fans in the world, right? And I always have. All my friends at school were listening to Rush or Led Zeppelin. I was Pink Floyd. I was the Pink Floyd kid. And of course, it broke my heart when they broke up, right? When Roger Waters left the band. And I still was a fan of the reconstituted Pink Floyd, David Gilmour. I love Momentary Lapse of Reason. But I was a hardcore, diehard Pink Floyd fan. And Roger Waters, in one of his snarky interviews, said, when someone asked, when are you going to perform the Wall album again, live? And he said, well, when the Berlin Wall comes down, I'll do it. He knew. This is 1980-something, 86, 87, I think, when he said that. He knew it wasn't coming down. There was no plans for that Berlin Wall to come down. And when it did... he kept his word. And he staged the greatest concert I think that ever happened, the Wall concert at the Berlin Wall in 1990. And I went there. Yeah. I went there, and that's when I saw what your brother's valedictorian was talking about. The Berlin Wall coming down, freedom breaking out, Eastern Europeans realizing democracy for the first time, capitalism for the first time. And I just caught the bug. I got the fever. I was excited to be there. And I decided to come back to America and change my career I was headed towards law school. And I dropped out of law school and I started studying Russian and business because I wanted to go back to Eastern Europe and help the former Soviet Union transition to capitalism. It just was everything to me, but it was Roger Waters performing at the Berlin Wall that really. I didn't study Russian in school. I wasn't a Russian history major, literature. I have no Russian family, but I do now. But I mean, prior to that, I had no family. It was just pure, driven by the desire to see the Wall concert, which had been performed only in New York and L.A. That was it in America, and then in London, of course. At Earl's Court, I think, but that was it. Yeah. And so this was the only chance.
I know. I did a deep dive on that whole tour, and it's just remarkable the limitations they had, and yet what they were able to achieve. And to I can't even imagine how amazing that must have been for you. Because you had heard about the Wall tour, the original one.
Yeah, it was hard. Like every school kid, was heartbroken because my freshman year in high school was when the Wall album came out. And if you can imagine being in high school when Another Brick in the Wall is the number one song in the world, for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah. And watching your teachers viciously hate it, and make fun of it. Oh, those English school kids, that's not even from a good part of London. Those school kids, singing, our teachers really disliked it. It was a very revolutionary moment, in public schools in America, I think, with that song. And so I just, I wanted, to see that live so badly, but you're right. They couldn't go on tour with that kind of thing. I mean, Roger Waters has done it now, years later. Oh, yeah. 20 or 30 years later, I guess. But then they weren't able to take it from city to city, so they just chose 2 in America and 1 in London. Yeah. It's just insane. It's just the amount of production they had to do for that. And the inflatables, I know. It's incredible. And they literally build a wall. I mean, with these styrofoam blocks. And that takes a lot of roadies, a lot of staff to literally build a wall in front. So what they did is the band was on this side of the stage, and the wall was built as we get through the album. The wall is built, separating the audience from the performers. And then at the end, it comes all crashing down, which in Berlin was very symbolic, right? The wall coming down and the Pink Floyd wall coming down. It was really a surreal moment for me.
It kills me that somewhere in a vault there's like all the Earl's Court dates were filmed, and I don't think we'll ever get to see that. But for me, I just hope with what Peter Jackson was able to do with the Get Back, I'm just like. But I guess it comes down to money, really. Like, someone's got to pay for that restoration.
Well, they're all fighting with each other, so they'll never agree on anything anyway.
Well, that's a small, tiny thing. I'm sure you know nothing about.
They hate each other.
Yeah.
Or two of them hate each other, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, was there anything that was like that had to be kind of left out of the book or cut out because of like you had to be under a certain page count or anything like that?
We did have a word count, and we had a roadmap.
Yeah.
David made an outline of his life, and I used that to interview him. So I didn't waste any time because I knew exactly what I needed for each chapter.
Yeah.
I don't think we did. Do you think we got anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I've read other memoirs and autobiographies, and maybe some people spend more time on their childhood or their early years, but we got right to Russia. I wanted to keep this interesting, and so I think by chapter 2 we're already close to on the road to me getting to Moscow. By chapter 3 I'm in Moscow.
And there wasn't anything where David said, "Don't put that in the book." That never happened.
Right.
So I not consciously, and I'm sure we could have written a 1,000-page book and put more in, but it wasn't like we said, "Oh, don't put that in the book."
Right. Okay. I really enjoyed, the clip of it. Like it's detailed, but like you said, we get a little bit of backstory, but it's like, boom, we're in Russia, and it's like, because that is, based on the cover and everything, like that's why we picked up the book. But it's good to have that backstory.
And so much happened. I mean,
it's insane.
Stolen Diamonds, Mariah Carey. He had, endless amount of fascinating stories to tell.
Now, were there any sort of you said there was nothing that you weren't afraid to talk about anything, but were there ever any moments that legal was like, ooh, should we not? Was there anything like that? Any questions like that?
There was. Twice the legal department has removed the name of someone that I accused of corruption in Russia.
Okay.
And I don't know why, because everyone else is accusing this woman of. It was I'm going to say it on your podcast. Is that all right? It was while I was in Russia, the Russian mafia controlled piracy. They counterfeited all the music, and they controlled all the factories. And there was a very strong rumor that the mayor of Moscow's wife was co-owner with the Russian mafia of one of those pirate factories, and it was true. And I put that in the book, but I think our legal team wanted to keep that out. But something like that. But not too many examples. But that would be one for sure.
Nothing that harmed the book anyway.
No. I just I talk about her, but originally I named her name, but they prefer not to have her name.
And then when we talk about these counterfeit products, we're talking about CDs.
Yes.
And then what was like the quality of those products, like compared to like European made or American made?
Sonically, it's the same. It's MP3 technology, right? So sonically, you won't tell the difference between a pirated Bon Jovi album and one produced by Mercury Records, right? It was the artwork that was vastly different, right? Obviously, a Bon Jovi album will come with many pages of booklet, right? And the lyrics sometimes where the pirates are like, screw it, we'll just, get a printer, print out some pages, slap it together, any picture you want, any Bon Jovi picture you want. And the pirates are really clever. They're very good at marketing because not only do they counterfeit the Bon Jovi album, but they might throw in a few extra songs from other albums too. So it becomes a new album with greatest hits. Or you could have all of an entire band's greatest hits on just a series of 1 or 2 CDs. Just put them all on there, you
Right?
know, and then slap some artwork that you downloaded from the internet.
And then what was like the marketplace for these items?
Well, Russia was the biggest counterfeit market in the world at that time.
Okay.
Hundreds of millions of CDs were sold, manufactured and sold there, and they exported this to Europe and to China and other places too.
Were there kiosks?
Yeah, and you would go around Russia, and this is the late 90s, where it's really just chaos in the wild east, and you know, you could go buy some cigarettes and some gin and tonic in a can, and then the latest U2 album, all in a kiosk right here. I mean, they would sell anything, you know, children's toys, you know, a Bon Jovi record, you know, just all together. And these were kiosks throughout the city, and every city in Russia. And even when you would land in the airport, they would have these kiosks where you could, you know, buy, you know, some crackers, and here's the new Mariah Carey album, and things like, you know, whatever you want.
Right.
It was totally accepted by the government, by the police. They did nothing to crack down on it, nothing at all, and so it was widespread.
And then was it kind of the same practice before the fall of the Soviet Union? Or how was it different, or do you know?
Well, before the fall of the Soviet Union, there was definitely bootleg albums,
right?
And people were sneaking in a Beatles album. Someone would travel to Europe and buy an album and sneak it back into Russia, to the Soviet Union, and make copies of it. And you know what they would use to make copies of these albums? X-rays, the X-rays. And my wife, it's funny, She talks about growing up in the Soviet Union and how she one time found one of her father's Beatles albums, and she was looking at it, and it was also the X-ray of a man who had tuberculosis. You could see it on the X-ray, and then you could listen to Let It Be if you wanted to.
Wow!
And when you play it on the turntable, so they were very crafty at stealing music.
Yeah.
But during the Soviet Union, we were, you know, cheering them on, you know, yes, you know, let's get the Western music in there and behind the curtain. Anything we can do to support that, you know, and Russians would have these like secret parties in their apartments, you know, and they'd all get together and copy the album and listen to it and give out copies of the album. And that was kind of a subversive way to listen to Western music. And the Soviet censors, they knew, they just turned a blind eye to it. They knew it was happening. But
right.
Some people were caught, some people were arrested, some people were put in prison for selling these things.
Wow.
But it wasn't something that the censors could really stop. You know, it was just so widespread. And that's what created this great demand for Western pop culture when the Berlin Wall did come down and the Soviet Union did collapse. They were ready for us.
Right. I can't imagine those X-rays sounded that great, though. Sonically.
No.
Well, not
but it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
Right? I would take that.
And they were desperate for anything Western. Right. You know, Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Beatles, anything.
And
But Motown was allowed in. Motown, the Soviet censors would allow Motown. They loved Marvin Gaye. They loved
Diana Ross.
What the Soviet censors really liked was music talking about inner city strife in America. Anything that would make America look like it's in trouble, like there's problems in America. And, you know, take Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On." That was the perfect song for the Soviets to spread widely. So, funny enough,
I mean, you literally have inner city blues on the flip side.
Right there. And that's what the Soviets were always trying to say, is America is not so great. You know, communism is the future. That is not the future. And they would point to music from Motown as proof.
So, I mean, I don't... It's just interesting because I want people to read the book, and it's really fascinating to read the story of how you got to Russia through this diamond company, and then you're almost going to be working for a ketchup company.
Yes, Heinz.
Ketchup or music?
Heinz.
I know.
Yeah, could have been making ketchup.
How unsexy compared to running a record label.
Incredible.
It would be a whole different book if it was ketchup.
It would be a lot different. The cover would be the same, though.
Yeah.
Still be red.
Yeah.
No, it was a situation, Eric, where it's the early 90s. The Berlin Wall's come down, Soviet Union has collapsed, and there's still not a lot of Americans traveling over there who can speak Russian or are businessmen too. You did have academics, you had aid workers, a lot of government folks.
Yeah.
But businessmen not so much. And I saw this wide open possibility for me. And so when I got there, by the time I was in Russia, I'd had my business degree and I had a little bit of Russian. I learned enough to, get along. And it was like a gold ticket. I could work anywhere I wanted because the foreign firms that were moving in to Russia were looking for foreigners to bring capitalism, marketing ideas, because it was bringing new ideas to Russia, and so you couldn't just hire local people without help from folks like me who'd been studying business, working in business, their career, and so I really had a lot of opportunities, and many people went into finance. That's very lucrative. There's a gentleman named Bill Browder who's written a couple books based on his financial issues that he's had there in Russia. They're massive bestsellers. There's other people who went into oil, gas, all the natural resources. And I was looking for something, and I saw this job offer for Heinz, and they hired me to do it, to be their financial director. But then all of a sudden, this record company offer came up, and the help wanted ads, and I was looking at the Moscow Times, and I mean, all my life I've loved music, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine I could work in the music industry. I don't have any family.
Right.
I wasn't living in LA or New York or Nashville. There was just no road to the music industry for me. But in Russia, I went right to the top, because no one else would do it. That's why. And so Polygram, which is a company that doesn't exist now, but back then was actually the largest record company in the world, it hired me. They were the first ones to open an office in Moscow, and they were looking for people to help them run that office, and that's how I got the job.
I think I have
right place at the right time, basically.
Yeah, no, that's such an incredible story, just coming from essentially a farm in Ohio.
Yeah. Doesn't train you for music business. Although I had a lot of, to be honest with you, it does, because riding on a tractor a lot by yourself for hours and hours, doing farm work, listening to the radio, probably was a good education for me, because I listened to a lot of classic rock radio growing up, and it helped me when I finally was in the music industry to hear hits. I could really hear a hit song because I listened to so many over those long hours on the farm.
Right. And I would imagine too, there's a bit of that management that you get that ended up being really crucial for when you did take over as CEO to build that marketing team.
To
get that local input. Because I thought it was interesting in the book you mentioned how much more difficult it would be to market an indie rock band versus a pop star.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had never thought of that. And I'm just, I was wondering, like, maybe the Cliff Notes edition of, at least at that time, why that would be difficult versus a pop singer.
I would still argue it's the same today. I don't think it's changed. I think pop stars write hit songs and make music videos that are excellent promotional tools. An indie band, it's a lot harder to promote because they don't have, they're not writing the hit songs for radio as much. They're not producing the slick marketing videos as much. Some do, sure, but but a pop star with a major label backing will spend, at that time we were making videos for $300,000-400,000 and up. And
I've heard of this.
they don't do that anymore. But back when the music industry really was at its peak, music videos. Well, I mean the California Love video, Tupac and
oh, you
Dr.
mean
Dre was
the
probably,
Mad Max prequel?
Yeah, I think that was one of the most expensive videos ever.
I have to imagine, like.
But you had to do it. And that's when MTV was really strong too. People actually watched MTV for music videos and not these other programs they have.
Right.
So the pressure was on to not only get on the radio with a pop song, but get on MTV with a great video. And I knew I had a limited amount of time to make this company work. And if I was going to work with indie bands, those are the kind of bands you develop and nurture over years and years, which is a very, very good thing, and I'm totally for it. But as a chief executive, I needed profits now. I needed sales immediately, and so I went to the pop route.
Yeah, I mean, you bring that up, and I think of Pink Floyd, and like, I mean, I love them too, but like, look how long it took, for them to really. I mean, granted, they're developing their sound, but EMI like essentially gave them unlimited studio time to like develop, and I feel like that's also a luxury we don't see much these days. But it totally clicks for me. Not that I would consider Pink Floyd an indie band, but it's kind of similar because they're not necessarily making radio hits. I mean, they were so reluctant to release Another Brick in the Wall as a single because of they just had a couple during the Syd Barrett era, I think, where they just kind of didn't go anywhere. That's so interesting. And it's funny too, because I grew up loving MTV and I saw the change of it basically turning into like reality show type content. And I wonder, like, from your perspective, like how much of that was just like the rise of the internet versus like MTV like consciously making that shift away from music videos? Do you think what am I trying to say? Basically, do you think it was a natural thing, or do you think MTV kind of forced it because this was more profitable?
I have an opinion. I blame Beavis and Butthead. I blame Beavis and Butthead because they were so damn popular.
Yeah.
And
but they did watch music video.
They did, and they made fun of them, which was just great. But they proved to MTV that they could make money other than broadcasting music videos.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what led to more of the reality programs. And then I think the big one was the Jersey Shore. Wasn't that the real breakthrough?
Gosh, I'm trying to forget that still.
And soon, record labels started noticing, hey, we're spending $1 million on this video, and you guys are showing Snooki at the Jersey Shore. Why are we doing this now? And so the budgets were decreasing, meaning the videos were getting less and less interesting a little bit too. And I think MTV went for a money grab and decided, hey, we can program all this for daytime. A lot of people watch us during the day. We can have all this, and reality programming is cheap, doesn't cost a lot to produce.
A lot of cable channels went off their mission. MTV did that. The Sci-Fi Channel shows a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with science fiction.
Right.
Arts and entertainment.
Bravo.
They're not arts and entertainment anymore. So I
History
think
Channel.
It was a trend that, again, like you said, profits became more important than what their mission was.
Yeah, and I'd imagine too they could own these properties.
Exactly.
Make money off that.
Videos.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And then too, I wonder if it was just like changing listening habit, because we had. I don't know when, I'm not too clear when you exited the recording music industry, but like I know that, I mean, just as a consumer, like Napster and eventually streaming just had such a devastating effect on the industry itself.
It did.
Huge effect.
So I would imagine some of that transferred over to MTV, and then the shrinking budgets too. It's like, didn't all happen at once, but it was sort of kind of, that didn't help.
I was working with Universal when Metallica took on Napster, which is one of the great, I don't know how you describe that, just tragedies, I think, for Metallica. I think it was a huge mistake for them to do that. And I was on the record company side with the people saying, please do this, please help us. But I think it was a terrible thing that happened because they became the man. You know, the man that they're always singing about. You know, they became that man. And we it was a time when the record industry was making really big mistakes, reacting very badly to Napster and internet piracy. We were, if you recall, suing little boys in their basements, you know, downloading. I mean, the weight of the entire record industry of America attacking a 12-year-old kid, I don't remember his age, but these teenage kids downloading music for free. And that wasn't working. So then we started enlisting bands, and Metallica was the one that signed up first. And the drummer, Lars was the most vocal of any musician out there. And he had a right. I mean, when he was on, I think it was the Grammys or something, where he talks to the camera and says, it's not right. This is, we work hard for this. We deserve to be paid for this. Of course he's right. But it just turned everything upside down, you know, about rock and roll, the whole idea of rock and roll. And it just, I think it really hurt them. I wish we in the music business did not ask them to be spokespeople for that.
They should have found a way to work with them and make it profitable. Like turn Napster into something where people would pay as they do
which
now.
They've done. But then it was just panic. It was just panic. It was panic from the executive suite to the warehouse in any record store or record company. Everyone was, what is this MP3 stuff? Who is this Sean Parker and this Napster stuff? What is this? What is going on?
I was asking the same questions, like, wait, what? I remember in high school, like, people would be, like, downloading something completely mistitled. Be like, oh, check it out. And sometimes it'd be, like, joke stuff. Like, someone would, like, or people would get their demo out that way, right? Mm-hmm. So there was, like, it was crazy. The internet was crazy back then. It was. Like, no one really knew. And it's hard. It's easy. I mean, I guess, hindsight, it wasn't, there was mistakes made, but, like, what, you know, knowing what we know now, like what, obviously you touched on it, talking of, you know, trying to monetize it, work with it, which eventually became like Spotify and these streaming services. But like, I don't even know if it happened. I mean, I don't know what else.
We shouldn't have gone after the kids though.
Right.
That was,
work with them.
The lawyers.
That would have been the solution, but nobody saw that.
Yeah. Record company lawyers are notoriously over-aggressive.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Not all things.
And you can understand that if you give everything away for free, this is how people make their living. Right. And suddenly the music was free, and who could make a living? I love writing books, but if I couldn't make a living from it, would I be writing books? I don't know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I do this show effectively for free. I get ads that run, but I'm at the whimsy of what advertisers are willing to pay and like viewing habits, and like it can get rough. Like it's tough, man. Yeah. And I imagine a lot of like I interview a lot of musicians, and it's like I feel like they're sometimes in the same boat when it comes to like. Mm-hmm. Although I did talk to one band from Australia, and they make way more money streaming than they do touring,
that's unusual.
Which is hilarious. But yeah, they do really well. They have over 1 million monthly streams, and yeah, they're just two guys, and yeah, they just I don't think they tour a lot. I think that's the problem. And then when they do, they have to bring a whole band. So I don't think it's.
I saw that.
Oh, you did? Oh, with Good Morning. Yeah, their band name is Good Morning. Good luck trying to Google them. Well, they're so... Anyway, we're digressing. But yeah, like... so, yeah, you're... In terms of the music industry today, like, what do you think of... like, especially with the way, like, Spotify's constantly raising prices and stuff like that, beholden to these shareholders, and like it's known that they're not really paying artists fair share, especially under 1,000 streams a month. Like
nothing under 1,000 streams.
Right.
Now,
I mean, there are competitors out there, but they're sort of they're like the bellwether or whatever. Like they're
the
sort
giant
of,
in the industry, and that's most people are getting their music from Spotify
Right.
or Apple Music. It's a different model, and it's not fair to the artist or the songwriters yet. And yet Spotify is losing money, but they're getting, $10 a month from millions and millions of people.
Right.
And they still can't turn a profit. I use Spotify. I mean, I think it's a great idea and a great concept, and I can make my playlist public,
Yeah.
So it's great, but it's definitely the artist and the songwriters are not getting their fair share.
Yeah.
Is it like 0.00003 per stream?
Yeah.
It's also taken out the record executive as the gatekeeper, which used to be a big deal. And now really anyone can get their music out there.
Right.
But when I was in the record company, I was a gatekeeper. I was responsible for bringing artists in and not bringing certain artists in, not signing them, right? Trying to figure out that'll work and that won't. And the pressure was on me to deliver results, and if I signed a band that flopped, my job was on the line, right? Especially if we invested money in that band. So it made people like me, constantly looking for new music, and not just the easy way of going on TikTok or whatever. Back then we didn't have it, right? You had to go to the club and find music before your competitor does, right?
Right.
So that role, I think, has been diminished a lot, the role of the gatekeeper. And of course, a lot of people say that's a good thing. Who are you to be the one deciding who gets a record deal or not? But the flip side is, I don't think we're developing super groups as much as we used to. I think there's sometimes maybe too much music out there, and it's hard to filter sometimes. My sons, they're appreciative because they can make music and put it on Spotify, and no one can stop them, right?
Right.
So I understand how young people really appreciate it, but I do think it has diminished the ability for a band to become a super group anymore. I think those days are past us, and we're
not getting albums like Rumors or Thriller,
or The Wall,
with the exception of Taylor Swift. We're not getting those albums that are cultural milestones.
You were talking about Carole King, Tapestry. What an
my
important
all-time favorite
album was
incredible
to your life, And
I interviewed her for my college paper.
Oh my gosh!
At A&M when she was making an album.
Yeah.
And when the album came out, it was Tapestry. I thought, oh my God!
Wow.
I wish
What a scoop!
I wish I had said, hey, can I come in the studio? But I didn't know what she was making at the time.
Right.
I just interviewed her because she was a great songwriter.
Right.
But that's an album up there with Thriller and Rumors and, and The Wall and Dark Side.
These cultural moments with albums, I don't think we have anymore like we used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that stuff a lot because of just the day and age that we live. We're so separated in terms of there's nothing TV used to unify us in a way. Like even if you didn't have cable, you had broadcast, right? Everyone could tune in and watch the ABC special or whatever it is. Radio was a big player. I mean, I still listen mostly to independent college radio stations like NPR. I'll listen because KCRW here plays a lot of music. They break a lot of artists. It's great. But you used to see that with K-Rock, a commercial radio station. You don't see that. And I remember as a kid, they got the new Porno for Pyros album and they played the whole thing on the radio. And I was like, it was such a big deal, even though that album didn't necessarily wasn't a cultural milestone. It produced, I think, one hit. We'll Make Great Pets or something. But Yeah, I just think it's a reflection of where we are as a collective species. It's just like it's so hard to see a Jackson 5 come up or a Michael Jackson or just these
Or a Beatles.
yeah, because now like would they have these three? I mean, I love Ringo, but these three phenomenal songwriters have gotten together in a band like otherwise, or would they have just each done their own solo thing and with a ring light and their cell phone and
Right.
you know
Right.
Tom Petty used to say that if he was trying to get a record deal now with the Heartbreakers, he might have gotten a deal, but they would have dropped him after the first album didn't go straight to the top. And things. There's probably a lot of Tom Pettys out there that aren't getting a chance to shine because of this changed market.
I mean, I try to do what I can when I get an artist I really like or an album I really like that, maybe has like 1,000 monthly listeners, because I, from my own experience, I know how hard it is to make music and get it out there. And that's why I don't do that. Also, I think I just wrote songs that sounded like something Billy Joel had already written. So
should give him to Billy Joel. He's back. He's recording
He's looking
again.
for new stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so I mean, it is interesting because I feel like we still have what I notice, and I don't listen to a lot of pop music, but I do notice that we still have pop stars. But what's interesting is now they're more like, in some ways, more known for like celebrity or the things that they do or the places that, I mean, granted, that was always a thing even before the internet, but I feel like it's more almost like, the personality and the constant, like we can just go to their Instagram page or whatever and we're like always in their lives, whereas before it was a little bit more selected. Oh, they're on the red carpet or they made an interview on the Tonight Show, like, oh, we got to tune in. But now it's like constant feed of what their life is, and it's almost like it blurs the line between like a Kardashian and Olivia Rodrigo. It's just sort of like we're
Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Her boyfriends, and it's all you read about.
Right. I mean, people tuned in probably. I mean, I tuned in and watched the Super Bowl. I don't really watch the Super Bowl, but I was like, oh yeah, that's what her boyfriend's playing.
Right.
Which one is he? What does he do?
Right.
I think a lot of artists and bands have become brands, and had to.
Yeah.
With decreasing revenue from album sales, and also the record companies have now started to get a little slice of the concert touring money from bands, especially the new bands.
Yeah.
360 deals.
Yeah, these 360 deals did not exist 10, 20 years ago.
Right, you couldn't.
Right, you were forbidden. And now the record companies have been able to especially new artists who are always more eager to sign on the dotted line. The record companies have gotten a nice slice of their merchandising, their touring money. These are all things that used to be solely the domain of the band or the artist. And I think musicians are finding that they have to find all kinds of ways to market themselves now, and so that's why you have this increase. Exposure on Instagram, more brand associations like never before. Something that's really new that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago is licensing of music for anything. Cadillac commercials.
Oh, right.
Skincare. There was always been music licensed for film in Hollywood. And even then, limited, right? Not just any song and
Sometimes it was like older stuff too.
yeah, and
now you can make an impact, like Kate Bush is running up that hill on Stranger Things.
Like how many years later? 30,
and
40 years later?
and that is
the
wonderful.
biggest,
That is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Or Sophie Ellis Bextor's having to come
Burner on
back
the
with
Dance
this
Floor
Saltburn.
from Saltburn, and a long time Belinda Ronstadt and The Last of Us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's always been good to get your music in a film or TV. But the advertising, I think, is a big change.
Would you say Well, what I noticed too, especially since collecting vinyl, like, a soundtrack in the 80s was like almost all it was like almost music made for that film. Like you see it with like Beverly Hills Cop, like the Pointer Sisters,
that's for sure.
the Neutron Dance, or like all these different songs.
The Breakfast Club, all those songs.
Right, right. And I feel like now it's more about getting maybe pre-existing stuff. Like I feel like every crappy B movie in the 80s had like some movie tie-in. Like even DC Cab had some like I don't even know what some bar band doing like a blues rock and roll song. Yeah, I don't remember, but it was like a thing. Or even like Back to the Beach, which is a great film too. Like I feel like a lot of that music was created for that film.
A lot of films, the music was way better than the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the song "Endless Love" was #1 for 9 weeks. The movie,
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Xanadu
Diana Ross
wasn't a great movie, but it was an incredible soundtrack.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
well,
I mean, that's like an unofficial ELO album in my head,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I own a copy.
Same here.
It's like, no, you flip it over. You don't know.
Yeah.
But
the movie.
Yeah. I mean, Gene Kelly's in that, right? He has that one moment.
He is. I actually worked with him once.
Oh, wow.
He hosted a TV series called The Funny Side, which no one remembers. And I was the publicist. Setting up interviews for Gene Kelly.
That's great.
Yeah.
What year was that about?
71.
Okay.
My first year at NBC.
Oh,
yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You also you interviewed Paul.
I did.
Yeah.
He's the only Beatle I ever met. I had him for 30 minutes. I did it for Sirius XM in their glass studio in New York.
Yeah.
And they videoed it, and they can't find the video.
Oh, that's tragic.
I understand you could lose my video, but you lost Paul McCartney on video?
Wow.
I will say for 30 minutes, I felt like his attention was totally on the interview. He wasn't thinking about where he had to be next.
Yeah.
He was there with one other person. He didn't have an entourage. And he was with me for 30 minutes. I was told before the interview by Sirius, don't talk about the Beatles or Linda. He talked about the Beatles and he talked about Linda.
Right.
So it was just a great opportunity to interview Paul.
Was that at all intimidating for you?
I've been working with people like that my whole life.
Yeah.
So,
but still, it's a Beatle.
I know. The only person I've ever been intimidated by was my favorite science fiction author.
Oh.
Philip K. Dick.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I met him at a science fiction convention, and I was like, "Well, I'm #1 fan." I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked with Dick Clark and Bob Hope and Gene Roddenberry, and that's.
Oh yeah, you wrote one of the most infamous Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes, or you came up with a story, right?
I wrote two. One was Menage a Trois in the game.
Yeah, the game is what I'm referring to. Yeah. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about predicting the future a little bit. That's interesting.
I know. And then when I look, I go, "Oh my God, Candy Crush, Pokemon." But when I wrote it, I did it because I was playing too much Tetris.
Oh, which version were you playing?
Oh, so this was 1990. So whatever.
The NES one, do you think, or was
it was on my computer?
Oh, right, I remember that. Yeah.
And honestly, that's where the idea for the game came from.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's so funny. Just like, I like the idea of, because that was a great, if you think about it, that was Tetris. What a great export from Russia.
Probably one of the most
bringing it back to Russia.
Yeah.
Probably one of their biggest exports to the U.S.
T.A.T.u. and Tetris.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I had forgotten. Like the way it's spelled. I was like, "Who is it?" Like it was vaguely familiar, and then I popped over on Spotify. I was like, "Oh, I remember this song."
Oh, T.A.T.u. Yeah.
T.A.T.u. Yeah. What was that all? Like I didn't get to that part in the book. I'm sure you cover it.
That's an interesting section. Yes. Yes. They might call them the most dangerous band in the world.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tease us a little bit? I want people to read the book.
Well,
but
you remember the Sex Pistols or how notorious they were? Well, these two girls made them look like kindergartners.
No.
Oh yeah. They were. We have a story in the book about how they were banned from the Jay Leno show, the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
They went on it.
They were on it.
How much should we tell?
Well, I'll let you tease. You're better at teasing than I am.
Well, all right. I'll see if I can go right up to without giving the punchline away. So David discovered T.A.T.u, signed him to Universal Music Russia, brought them to Eurovision. And of course, they were so controversial because two women were kissing. And we all know how Russia is with gay rights.
Yeah, yes.
Like,
seriously, yes.
So that's why one of the reasons they were so controversial. Were they really lesbians? Not so sure. But they made their point.
Yeah.
And so they were signed to do the Jay Leno show when they were having a big single in America, all the things she said. And so they go on the show and they were told not to kiss. Don't kiss on the air. They did, but that's okay.
They never listened to anybody. So.
Cut away from them. So I'm not going to give the punchline away, but they were wearing T-shirts. And they wrote something on the T-shirts in Russian. Well, what they wrote was not something you would ever hear on the air.
Gotcha.
And everyone who was Russian, who was watching the Tonight Show that night, called NBC to complain it was an obscenity.
Right, of course.
In Russian.
Yeah.
Well, it translated to English. Anyway, so they were banned.
Yeah.
I think from the whole network.
Yeah. Definitely from the Tonight Show, and then we were not allowed on any other other programs.
And then they went to Japan and did something. Their manager did something really bad. They were doing a TV show in Japan, and the manager was watching the show in his hotel room and noticed there was a sponsor. Was it Firestone?
Bridgestone tires.
Yeah. And he told the girls they couldn't go on the show unless they got paid by the tire company. Well, the tire company wasn't going to pay the girls. They were sponsoring the show.
Long-time sponsors of a Saturday night show in Japan. Yeah.
So he let them perform.
They created a lot of controversy, but it always translated into album sales. They're the biggest selling Russian band in history, and over 5 million albums sold, and
around the world. Right?
Around the world, 27 countries. They were platinum or gold, but they were very provocative, very controversial, and that's what drove a lot of it.
Were you ever like pressured to maybe reel them in a little bit?
Oh yeah, very much so. But it was pointless. I couldn't.
Right.
I mean, they really they started off as a project meant to provoke, right? In a country like Russia, that when the Soviet Union, homosexuality was a crime.
Right.
It was a very, a country with a heavy influence of the Russian Orthodox Church. So it was very provocative for them to kiss on in a music video and to sing about gay rights and the LGBT community, to sing in support of that. It was dangerous, in fact, to be doing that, but they did it, and their videos were number one on MTV. Their songs were number one in the charts. They were simply unstoppable. But what happened is the girls, after becoming wildly popular in Russia, really developed their own voice. And so when they started traveling to other countries around the world, anywhere from Brazil to Japan to Belgium to Australia, everywhere, and the US, they started speaking up about a number of things, and not just gay rights. They were speaking out against the war in Iraq, for example, the US invasion of Iraq. Then they really, they were controversial, but they were not silly like the Sex Pistols, just drunk and being obnoxious on stage. They were always pushing a message with their controversy, and that's what made them, I think, even more dangerous than the Sex Pistols.
But you had a talk with them before they did the Tonight Show.
I did.
I promised you they would be good.
So, everyone knows that, especially if you're a foreign band, you want to break in America. And the Beatles, obviously, their goal was to break in America, and it was through the Ed Sullivan Show that they really got that boost. And so I thought, if I sat the girls down before they go on the Jay Leno show and explain how the Beatles did this with Ed Sullivan decades ago, and this is their Beatles moment on network TV, things were going to go really good. But
and then they promised you
they promised they wouldn't let me down, and they didn't, because we definitely were in the news. They definitely gave a memorable performance, but they it's interesting because Ed Sullivan, as Russians, meant nothing to them, but also network TV in Russia was always under the control of the Kremlin. So they weren't big fans of TV anyway, not really believing in it. They believed in MTV. MTV was everything. That was the safe space for an artist, not network TV, not entertainment programs, based on their own history back in Russia. So they were wonderful on MTV, but anytime we put them on network TV, it was always unpredictable.
Right. They wanted to rustle some feathers.
They did.
I guess, how many headaches did they cause you over there? I mean, like literal headaches.
Many. My job was on the line numerous times. The incident Fred mentioned in Japan, not only did it cause so much trouble for them, T.A.T.u, but the Japanese were so angry that they banned all of Universal's artists for a year on that TV channel. And
wow. It was a really important promotional.
It was the #1 rated music program show on Saturday nights. It's a live show, and it was the #1 show. It's like one of these Japanese families sit down to watch, right? It was a great honor to be invited. They were, but they had the #1 album in the country, so we were really, really successful in Japan. So it was only natural that they would be invited on that TV show, but they caused so much trouble that they were banned, and so was Rihanna, so was Bon Jovi, so was all the Universal artists we had, and there was a lot of albums teed up to be released in Japan right after the T.A.T.u album, and so that put my job on the line in the most serious way. But the thing is, they just kept selling albums, more and more albums. Every controversy, a million more albums, and so that saved my job.
Jeez. Wow.
But it was touch and go for years. It really was.
Do you talk about, I'm sure you talk about leaving Universal in the book, and then you go to Gibson.
Yes.
And then kind of do like similar, bringing Gibson into Russia. How was that different than, I guess it was a lot less headaches in a way.
The biggest difference was I was by myself with Gibson. I literally was alone completely with Polygram and then Universal. There were already the beginnings of a company there. Right. Polygram was merged with Universal, so I was able to build on that. And there was the beginnings of a music industry that we were working on. With Gibson, they called me from the Nashville headquarters one day and said, we want to open up in Russia, and you're the only one that is crazy enough to do this, based on what they heard about me. Yeah. And that's a challenge, starting a business anywhere in the world, even here in Los Angeles. That it ain't easy just starting from nothing, a brand new spanking business. Yeah. But to start a Nashville-based guitar company in Russia with nothing, that was a real bureaucratic challenge. And, Russia's a very corrupt country, one of the most corrupt in the world. So obviously I had to do some things that I wouldn't be able to do here in America to get the business started. I certainly had to pay off this person, that person, this person, just to move things forward, just to get a bank account open, things like that. Yeah. So that was a big challenge. But on the flip side, Gibson is so beloved by musicians. The guitar brand is, people get tattoos with Gibson. And people just, shirts, merchandise. I didn't experience that at Universal like I did at Gibson. The whole love of the brand, the icon. Right, yeah. So that was fun because I always said I was like Santa Claus over there. I was showing up to give away guitars because my job was to put guitars in the hands of rock stars who then would go on TV, play on their Gibson. That's advertising. That's free advertising for Gibson. And that's how we did our advertising, just putting a guitar in the right hands, but it's the musicians that have saved Gibson. I mean, Gibson almost went bankrupt in the late 80s, when in the early 90s, and it was on the verge of, one of the times it was on the verge of bankruptcy, and it was Slash from Guns N' Roses who saved that company.
Wow.
Because he played a Les Paul, and Slash became the biggest guitarist on earth for a number of years. And our Les Paul guitars started selling more and more and more thanks to Slash. So Angus Young has been a major savior for Gibson over the years. And these are guys that will not play on anything else. I mean, Joan Jett once, she only plays Gibson, and somebody after a show handed her a Fender to sign an autograph, and she wrote, "I will never play Fender" on the guitar. That's how loyal these people are to their
I believe
brand.
it.
And that was fun for me to bring that to Russia, because it's the same thing. The musicians there loved Gibson every bit as much as Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top loves Gibson. I mean, it just is it's one of those brands that transcends boundaries, and there's just this great appreciation. So that was a lot of fun. I can imagine if I had opened a Harley Davidson showroom, it would have been a similar experience. Just this American iconic brand in the heart of Russia. Yeah, it was a really fun experience to do that.
I think this was intentional, because
that's a Les Paul.
Should we tell what happened originally?
Because I feel like this is a little different, though.
Yeah,
you couldn't quite copy it.
I know, and there's legal reasons for that.
Of course, I figured. But
it is meant to invoke Gibson.
But it is definitely meant to.
Oh, I recognized it.
Yeah. So the original illustration, did not invoke Gibson.
No, I almost had a heart attack.
We have to at least.
It's much similar to a Fender Stratocaster.
It changed.
Yeah. But even then, it's not quite a Gibson, so to keep the trademark lawyers at bay. But
I get you,
But that's the idea,
yeah.
Since Gibson's such a big part of the book, it made sense to invoke it.
I immediately picked up on that as a guitarist. I was like, oh, yeah. I mean,
I knew if I didn't, you would pick up on the fact that it would look like a Fender. I knew, and I even said to the publisher, hey, listen, there's people who know what a Gibson looks like.
And they agreed right away. It wasn't like...
No, I think it was definitely right move. I mean, it's a great cover. I mean, it's. I was talking to some other authors a couple of years ago, and it's interesting how much book covers are now like essentially like a thumbnail. Like it needs to pop, right? Almost like an album cover.
You got their attention in the store,
right? It needs to be like this small. It's got to pop, right?
Even the spine,
right?
Yeah.
Of
course, that's the advance, though. That is
I was going to say, I don't think this is the
No, it's a better
proper,
spine, and it's a hardback in the real books.
Yeah.
My original plan, what I gave to the graphic designer for the publisher, was a photo of Pete Townsend smashing his guitar.
Yeah.
And I wanted that in smashing it into the Kremlin. But we didn't have room for Pete there, but we got the guitar.
That's
it
great.
makes its point, right?
Yeah. Do either of you play music, play an instrument?
Zero talent for me in that area.
This is a little embarrassing. I mean, I've been working in the music business and in the guitar business for my whole career, and I do not play a musical instrument.
I don't think it's necessary.
I think it's an advantage. I know there's going to be some people that don't like me saying this, but I think there's a lot of record executives out there that are musicians who didn't quite make it. And so where do they go? They go work for the record company, right?
Sure.
And they hold some of those resentments, and I think that affects their decisions on which bands to listen to, which bands to try out. For me, since I didn't play any musical instruments, I couldn't play guitar, so I didn't have any jealousy if someone came in with a great guitar riff or whatever. I would never think I can do that better, which I guarantee you there's music executives who do think like that.
Wow.
And I think that shades their decision making. I think it allowed me to be also more embracing of pop music. I mean, I'm a rock guy. I love rock music. Like I said, I'm a lifelong Pink Floyd fan.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I understand the power of pop music. As a chief executive of a record label, I knew I needed songs in the pop charts. Absolutely. And there ain't no guitars in those songs either, some of them. You know, so I had to be more broad-minded and think, okay, I can listen to, you know, Rush or Van Halen, but I need to listen to the Go-Go's and Richard Marx. I know, but you, as a record executive, you need to promote a lot of different. And I also, being the chief executive, I was also in charge of the jazz division and the classics as well.
Of course, yeah.
So it's a really, you really go from this to that, the one extreme to the next, but you need to be able to keep the label moving forward, you know, and attract new artists too. So you want the artists that you have on the label help you attract other artists. So that's important to keep in mind as well.
Right.
He always had people lining up in front of his building wanting to audition or be signed to the label.
We did. Once T.A.T.u. became a worldwide success, it was the biggest story in Russia, which is really ironic that now Russia's turned so anti-LGBTQ because in 2001, 2002, 2003, that's all they did was talk about T.A.T.u. and how proud they were. T.A.T.u. was selling around the world. Even the Russian Minister of Culture gave a speech about T.A.T.u. That's how things have changed so much in 25 years. But I had every artist in the country, both new and the veterans, the icons, wanting to come to Universal because we were a conduit to the world. You know, we could take a Russian artist and promote them around the world, and we were way ahead of our rivals at that point. Sony and EMI and Warner and BMG were miles behind us, and so I literally had artists standing in the front of the record label trying to get a meeting just to, you know, present me their music. And it was tough because, you know, you have to say no 9 out of 10 times. You know, you have to. You can't sign everybody. You just can't. And the vast majority just will never make it. And it's a terrible thing because these are people that have worked on this music for a long time, maybe their whole life.
Right.
And so when they would present it to me, I was always respectful of their work and their efforts. But you know, but 9 out of 10 times I could not sign them a record deal. And that begins to wear you down. Saying no so often. It's not a pleasant thing. In fact, I was so scared writing this book that we were going to get a rejection as karma coming around to hit me. I was really scared about that. Sure. Because I still think about all the times I had to say no to somebody, and I pray that I don't have to go through what they did. But I was very respectful. I tried to be very respectful, nurturing, and encouraging. To keep pursuing, you know, go talk to Sony. They're looking for somebody right now, for example. Or here's an indie label that really is good with your kind of music. We're not, you know. The problem is when I had these pop stars, every pop star wanted to come to us. And you can only have so many pop stars. Then you need to diversify and add some rock or some, you know, jazz or other things. But I kept getting the pop stars. They kept coming. And you can only handle so many pop stars on your roster.
Was there a crazy kind of pitch that stands out, or somebody that just maybe they were obnoxious or something, trying to get your attention? I don't. Was that covered in the book? I apologize.
No, I don't think I mentioned that. But there is one pop star who showed up with a toy AK-47.
Wow.
And she actually is famous because she went to the Grammys with that thing. It's part of her dress. She turned a gun into a part of her dress. Her name is Sasha. It was 10 years ago. And she got invited to the Grammys with this same weird outfit where it was a dress with a gun
Yeah.
where her
okay.
arm is. But she tried that before she went to the Grammys. She showed up at our office with that outfit, and then we had some security guards quite concerned whether or not they should let her upstairs. But once we verified this is not a real gun, I was very intrigued to meet her. Her music was not good, but her shock value was right there.
Right.
There is one band I had to turn down that went on to become superstars. But our lawyers forced me to say no, and it was
interesting.
Yeah, it was a beautiful band, 3 girls, Ukrainian girls, 3 Ukrainian girls, and the name of the band was Viagra.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to. I see why.
And they went on to sell millions of albums, but not with Universal. Our lawyer said no way.
Did they keep the name?
Yeah, they did. They created a space, Viagra.
Okay.
And somehow got away with that. I don't know how, but our lawyers were not up for the challenge. And this is when Viagra had just come out.
Oh, man.
And
that's hilarious.
yeah, I missed out on that one.
You could, man.
You can Google them, though, Viagra. They're great singers. They're really, really beautiful girls, and they sing really talented. But the name was a problem for our lawyers.
They didn't even try to. Did you try to persuade them to like
Change
the name somehow, or no?
No, they were
didn't want to deal with
convinced that it was genius, and they were right in some ways.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
They thought this was a
Little
genius.
Blue Pill might have worked, but
Yeah. Do you have? What's your favorite Pink Floyd album?
Well, I have to say The Wall, because it is, but also it just was so important to my career by going to Berlin and
Clearly.
seeing that concert.
Yeah, I mean, if ever there was an album to define your life, I would say that.
It changed my life.
Yeah.
And I know it changed a lot of people's lives, but it changed
Yeah.
mine in a big way. And I would never have ended up in Russia had it not been for that album. There was nothing pulling me to Europe like that Wall concert in Berlin. So for sure, The Wall is my favorite album.
Oh, your favorite album ever?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay, not just Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Have you listened to the Berlin Wall concert?
Not in detail.
Because there's some amazing performers on there. You've got Van Morrison singing "Comfortably Numb,"
Right.
Cyndi Lauper singing "Another Brick in the Wall."
I need
the
to revisit
Scorpions
it.
is there.
Yeah.
The band, Sinead O'Connor sang "Mother," which was it'll bring tears to your eyes watching that. It's just such a touching version of that song. It's a great album. I wish Roger hadn't gone bananas lately with his stance on Ukraine.
Right.
It's really hurts me because Roger Waters is one of the reasons I pursued a career in Russia and the music business, and to see him support. Well, I don't know if he supports, but he certainly is criticizing Ukraine.
Right.
and Israel and
a number of other things. But the Ukraine thing is really personal for me because he's so wrong. He's so completely wrong, and he's someone that I really thought was one of the wisest men in music. But no, not anymore. I can't say that.
Right.
In fact, I'm really grateful for what David Gilmour and
right,
Richard Wright and Nick Mason have done, supporting Ukraine, not just supporting Ukraine, but supporting bands in Ukraine,
right,
and doing duets to raise money for Ukraine. So that's the right approach. That's the right stance, and I think Rogers just lost his mind a little bit here.
Right. I don't think you're alone as a Pink Floyd fan. I mean, you just go on the subreddit, and it's just like there's a real love-hate with Roger, and it's frustrating as a fan.
It is.
Because like clearly you're the prime example of someone who's so touched and moved by this music. I am too, but then it's like it's a good exercise separating the art from the artist. It's like otherwise you can't. It's too hard to enjoy. Otherwise, I think.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite Pink Floyd album?
Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
I am more of a pop guy than a rock guy, I have to admit. So
Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, there's a world.
Music is music. I love it
Sure.
all. So
I do
no
too.
judgment. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah. Have you seen the Dark Side Turntable? It's
No.
amazing.
The Dark Side Turntable.
The Dark Side of the Moon Turntable.
Who makes it?
I don't remember right now. I just saw it on a Turntable Lab, and I know that they sell it. They don't make it, but it's literally the cover.
Yeah.
It lights up. It has a very. It's an Otophone. I don't know like if it's like 2M bronze or what. I'm not sure what it is, but it's a 2M cartridge. But it's also custom graphics that's unique to that turntable. It's amazing.
Well, now you know what to get David for his birthday.
No, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it sounds.
I wonder who manufactures that. I'm going to look into that.
I would imagine it's got to be like Project or I don't know. We could look it up, but I feel like we should keep
We're
talking.
going to Google it.
Yeah, but no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I have a hard time picking a favorite of what the big five. I'll call it the big five because I throw in I keep wanting to call it Echoes, but the one
Metal.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Metal. I really include that. I mean, some people go as they like to, but yeah. Big four as the big sellers, but I like to include Metal because Echoes is such like, just like that's the direction they're going. Is that song? So I mean, it's incredible to, especially when you read about the making of Dark Side. Just like they had a couple of failed attempts or like that record that was made out of like randomness, non-instrument album. And then to come up with that, I mean, it's just, and then it just, they were unstoppable for, almost that whole decade. It felt like.
And they were young men when they made Dark Side of the Moon.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
talking about issues that are still relevant today.
Yeah.
Especially, the 9 to 5, and you wake up one day and,
Yeah.
run, rabbit, run.
Yeah.
Dig that hole.
Yeah. I mean, money to me just really, it stands out. It's just like the older I get, the more like I understand that song. But still, Comfortably Numb is probably one of my favorite songs ever.
And David Gilmour, I think, is the greatest guitarist living right now, in my mind.
Yeah, so Tom Jones, they had that Prince cover hit, right? He did Kiss.
Yeah.
And then he followed it up like on his TV show with like I think he did Purple Rain, and David Gilmour played the guitar solo on that, and that was just like, yep. I mean, if anyone's gonna, step into Prince's shoes, like yes, David Gilmour can.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah. I remember he performed it the night Prince died. He was in concert somewhere, and he gave a performance of that. No, he's a Fender guy. He plays Fender.
I mean, bless his heart. We still love him. But...
Yeah. Although on Another Brick in the Wall, that solo was on a Les Paul Gold Top.
Oh.
The solo. But by far he plays Fender, and he's Fender's greatest guitarist for sure. I mean,
right.
I'm sure they're very proud of him.
I mean, it's just there. Yeah, I feel like for every Fender, there's someone who plays Gibson. But it is interesting when I start thinking about like iconic guitars and the guitarists and stuff like that. It's just like there are a lot of Fenders, but I'm kind of partial to like it's a lot of the '50s boxes. Like I had a Guild for a while, '58 pre-lawsuit Guild. So it had a real distinct Gibson-looking headstock. And then obviously Gretsch, like I'm a big fan of Eddie Cochran.
Yeah.
Just something about those, or Chet Atkins too. He had those.
Chet Atkins. We have a great story about Chet Atkins in the book. In fact, the book ends talking about Chet Atkins and his SST guitar with nylon strings. It had nylon strings. It was electroacoustic, but it had it has a solid body. And I had signed a guitarist to Gibson, the first one in Russia to be an officially Gibson-endorsed guitarist. And it was a woman. It was a female rocker named Diana Arbinina. And she reminded me a lot of Melissa Etheridge, who I had sold Melissa's records when I worked for Polygram. And she had the same energy, you know, and same command of the stage. And she was a great singer-songwriter, but her pride and joy was her guitar playing. I mean, that's all she cared about, is her ability to play guitar.
Yeah.
And we had a Chet Atkins in the showroom, and she was looking for something on for her tour, and I gave it to her, and she played that nonstop, and she knew far more about the Nashville sound than I could ever know, and she would talk about it at her concerts or in Russia about Chet Atkins and the Nashville sound. So I that was an example of me giving a guitar to an artist, and it really, you know, them taking it straight to the stage and performing.
Oh, that's crazy.
And for hundreds of thousands of people. And that's just such amazing and talking about it, how great a guitar it is. You can't beat that as far as advertising a guitar.
Wow.
That's the best.
That is really cool. That is a Santa
She's
Claus.
a brave woman, though. We talk about in the book how she took some chances. She went to, when Russia invaded Ukraine, she was one of the very few who spoke out against that. This was 2014. And she was blacklisted by the Kremlin immediately. All of her concerts were canceled, her TV appearances canceled. She was shunned by the music industry, everyone, except us, Gibson. We created a sanctuary for her. She basically used our showroom as a safe place to still meet with journalists and still try to do something, but her stance against the invasion of Ukraine really hurt her career, and that's what Russia can do to an artist. You know, I in the book we compare her to, say, you remember when the Kent State massacre happened, and then Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young wrote Ohio, the song Ohio.
Right.
You know, you didn't have the White House canceling them, right?
Right.
Or their concerts being canceled or anything like that. But in Russia, that's how it goes. If you speak against the Kremlin policy, your career can be finished. It's very different. Very dangerous.
Yeah. And then you've done a lot of work in recent years. I would say, unfortunately, you've had to do this work in terms of preservation of Ukraine art and music. And
that's my thing right now, my passion right now, yes.
Right.
Yes, it is.
David went to Ukraine in 2023?
Yeah, a year ago. I was there a year ago.
Wow.
I was vice president for Eastern Europe, so I had helped open, after the Russian music industry, I helped open the Ukrainian music industry. And we opened the very first Universal Music office in Kyiv. So I had a lot of friends there over the years that I kept in touch with. So when the war broke out, you know, I felt really, really, really awful for them, and I had to go and see how they're doing. So I went to Kyiv in May of 2023, and you can't fly there. You have to take the train because of the war. So it's a 17-hour train ride in 17 hours from Warsaw.
Okay.
So you fly to Warsaw, and then you take this train that goes through Ukraine, and it's vulnerable. I mean, obviously the Russians could try to attack the train, but they haven't done that yet. But it's certainly risky to get in and out of there. But I went and just was amazed at the resilience and the heroism of Ukrainians fighting this illegal invasion. And I was just so proud of what they were doing. And I visited a suburb called Bucha, which is north of Kyiv. And that's where the Russian army first came and tried to capture the capital, Kyiv, but were stopped in Bucha. But they were there for about 90 days, and they just did some horrible things there and committed so many war crimes. And I saw evidence of that when I was there. And so I came back to America, and I decided I've got to do something. I've got to do something. Yeah. And the one thing that I know is culture. That's the one thing that I could contribute.
Yeah.
So I created a podcast called Art During Wartime. And it's all about Ukrainians continuing to make art, continuing to do business in the field of art and design during wartime, just to keep the country going and support the soldiers on the front line. So that's my passion right now, because for 30 years I've been trying to build bridges between America and Russia, and that's gone. Those are gone. Those bridges are gone.
Right.
The Universal's closed. Gibson is gone. They're all gone. But I realize I need to work on building those bridges between the U.S. and Ukraine now. That's my mission.
I mean, it's important stuff, and it's just like, it's easy for us here to kind of get detached. It's going on 2 years now.
2 years.
Yeah.
And just horrible war crimes being committed, children being kidnapped. It's just awful. It's just an awful situation. And I hope I hope this book will help shine a light on what Russia could be, what Russia was when I was there, and what it could be. Because one of the theses of the book is that even though a lot of the bridges I had been building for the last 30 years are gone, and I accept that, we did manage to plant the seeds for future generations. And one of those seeds, I believe, is hip hop music. I really believe that by bringing, Eminem was the breakthrough for sure. The Marshall Mathers LP in the year 2000 just broke through all walls and opened the door for East Coast, West Coast rap to take over. And it did. It became the most popular genre of all. And it still is to this day. And there's a Russian hip-hop community right now. And they're the ones speaking out against the war the loudest. They're the ones putting their life and their career on the line. They're the bravest artists. And I think that's the one thing that we accomplished is planting those seeds. Because someday those kids are going to take back their country from the Kremlin. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And Putin hates rap music. So that tells you everything you need to know.
No taste.
And he's scared of it. He's scared of the ability, because rap it's not just music, it's a lifestyle. And it's an authenticity that combines young people. And there's hip hop communities around the world, but the one in Russia, I think, is going to be the one that changes that country.
Yeah, well said. I did read that part where you got that package of like, what the heck is this? Some blank, was a CD?
Yes, that's how they would do it, because they didn't want it to be stolen, or if you put the name of the artist on there, somebody's going to snag that, right? So it comes in a protected package, and it's top secret and all that.
But it's crazy to think now how against Universal was about promoting that album. And you effectively had to leak it.
I did. I did. I had bosses who were saying, no, British pop music is the way
they wanted
to go.
S Club 7.
They did.
S Club 7 over and who
I'm surprised you even heard of them. I mean,
they were.
It was a TV show. I know.
I saw some of it. Like, this is, as a teenager, like, this is crap.
That's what they wanted me to promote.
I can't believe that.
This is the future.
Yeah. I mean, no knock against S Club 7, but
no, you can knock it.
But like, who are we still talking about today? I mean, Eminem is like all of a sudden in the news again with this latest, and to think like you definitely had a huge hand in bringing that to Russia. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's awesome for one. That's just like so interesting to think about.
And I definitely met resistance. I did. I had resistance, because and so if you think about it, Universal had about 20 different record companies in Europe, right? Belgium, France, Germany, all of them. Every country had a record company, and of all of them, I was the only American executive, the only one in all of the music business. Not just Universal, but Sony. I was the only American. And, Europeans were thinking European music, European music. And me being American, I immediately thought, damn, let's get some of that West Coast rap over here. Or Public Enemy and Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Let's get some East Coast rap in here.
Right.
And I just had a different perspective because I was an American working over there. And I just didn't feel the British pop music. Couldn't feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about your story is like the opposite of what I think it was Dave Dexter Jr. or Dexler Jr., who was essentially he kept rejecting the Beatles at Capitol.
Yes.
And it's because
yes.
But you talk about executives having this little prejudice. I mean, I think he had a little prejudice against the Beatles, and he thought he knew better. He was like promoting some crooners or something. I forget exactly.
For Decca, right?
Yeah. So it's just like it's like I think I forget the executive, but he just had to go no, we're bringing these guys over. But yeah, definitely the opposite. But I love those stories. I love hearing these, well, now they're told stories, but like getting these pockets in music history, like getting kind of the peek behind the executive door, get into your office. This is just perfect. I loved reading this. I can't wait to finish the book. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. No,
We haven't had that much
putting
feedback yet because it isn't, it won't be out till July 2nd. So,
okay.
It's very nice to hear.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very warm. It feels very good.
No, I mean, yeah, I can't wait to see the inevitable miniseries on.
Would that be great?
We're working on it.
I mean, look, I watched vinyl.
I was just gonna say that I think could be modeled on this book.
I mean, my biggest problem with vinyl is what's the conflict? Who cares about this or that? This is not a true story. They have real artists with fake artists. What is any of this? Whereas this is this happened, and this is so, in sadly some ways it's not sort of timely in a way, but
I know.
But it's got everything you would want in a television show. You got a TV writer right here. You can pen that pilot.
Yes.
We've had some good reactions already. We've been talking to production companies.
We've got murder, sex, drugs, the EDM chapter. I think we'll talk about the ecstasy in the dance world. What else? We got everything that vinyl had.
Well, and then 90s, early 2000s are coming back in a big way. Just even styles, and just people are having that throwback sound. People are bringing that back. So I think it's just perfect.
Cool. I didn't know that. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I just talked to this artist, B. Miles. She's out in New York now, but she's originally from Southern California, and they just embrace that late 90s sound.
Oh wow.
That sort of drumming, you know what I mean?
Great. It was great.
Yeah. So I mean, and you look at even styles. I don't spend that much time on TikTok, but you just walk around and it's 90s are back. So
everything goes.
Yeah. So I think it's great timing. So. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love your show too. I watched several of your Pink Floyd episodes.
Oh well,
you've really gone into depth.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot too from you. What you've uncovered.
Wow.
A lot of footage too. You really found a lot. You're really good at finding archival footage.
The only stuff that's available is VHS rehearsal footage from the one at the Forum, I think, or am I saying that right? I think they played the Forum.
Yeah, the Forum.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you. That's a big honor.
But you also have a lot of information about the band in general. A lot of really interesting things that you've uncovered that I didn't know before. So being a Pink Floyd fan, obviously I love that.
Oh, awesome! Thank you. Yeah, I feel in some ways I became more of a fan through that research, just to read how things came about and what the challenges they faced. And it's a weird thing, but you feel you get to know them a little bit more. Yeah. I really feel Richard and I would really get along. I don't know, it's just in my head. I related to him being the quiet one, and just sort of getting kind of pushed around a little bit. I felt really bad for him during the Wall stuff, but I also understood Roger's position, of just they were in debt, they needed to get this album out. And
that was something I did not know, how much they were in debt.
Right,
and they had to make the wall for financial reasons.
Right.
I didn't know that they had been. It seems like so many bands, they had a nasty business manager who invested all their money and
Jeez.
and how many times have we heard these stories? You know,
Yeah.
it just seems like that was a thing back then. If you're a superstar rock band, you have some you know. Well, we'll look at the Beatles and Alan McCartney. Let's start with.
Well, yeah, the Stones and.
You know, I mean, it just musicians are vulnerable. I think they're very vulnerable to shysters.
Also, it's like being a good businessman and being a musician don't always align.
Connected,
They're almost like oil and water in some respects.
Not connected at all.
Yeah, and it's like you don't always want to think of that, or you don't think of the business side of things. It's like you just want to get your music out there,
Right.
You know, it's like yeah, take care of it, and it's just like
Next thing you know,
right, yeah. I remember talking with Johnny Eccles, and he was telling me like, you know, Little Richard was the one who really told him like, you know, own your music, got to own your music, and that's why they ended up in Elektra, because that was the only label that would let them own their stuff.
yeah.
So it's just like. You know, he had like as a band they had some foresight into that business, but even then I think they got shafted.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately.
No, those early record deals and publishing deals were just criminal. I mean, they just took advantage of young kids.
Well, it's a lot to read.
Not that they don't now, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit more regulated.
Yeah.
At least the bands have lawyers helping them out. Back then, they didn't even have lawyers. They were just signing away things, you know.
Right, because that was your only. I mean, what other deal were you going to get, or how else?
Exactly.
How else could you negotiate? You know, the barrier. You talk about the barrier to entry or being a gatekeeper. I mean, that was like literal physical things. Like recording was expensive. Like good luck trying to get on the radio. I mean, I touched on like how there was the whole mafia that controlled rock radio, and
Very
like,
much so.
you know, you had to. And that was America. That wasn't Russia.
I know,
Right.
but it is funny to me sometimes when people talk about that book, The Hitmen.
Oh yeah,
and
I
how,
have it somewhere.
Yeah, it's a classic, and talk about how payola and how the mafia, the mob in New York really could determine which album was number one on the charts and which album wasn't. And it's interesting because that the mafia has been in the music business seems like forever. Since there's been a music business, there's been a mafia sort of entangled in it. I guess in Russia I dealt with it on a whole new level, but there's always been a mafia alongside a music business. What it is that attracts them, I don't know for sure.
Money.
It's easy. It's easy. It's easy money for them.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's easier than selling weapons or drugs, I guess. I don't know. But.
Yeah, it's probably more fun in some ways too.
Yeah.
Sure. Entertainment. Show business.
Mobsters are vain too, just like everyone else.
Sure. Yeah. I saw the cars some of those guys were driving in the 80s. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the book coming out.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we got to know you because you're doing a great job with the podcast and promoting vinyl and the music.
Yeah.
So
it's
good to meet you in person.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Eric. Thanks.
This has been so excellent. And I want to thank all of you for watching. I'm your vinyl geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.